am Deacon Gary from the United States. My wife, Dr. Cindy, and I have been helping out in Pedive for the last couple of weeks. And today is our last day in the Hulu Archdiocese, and now we have to go to Kampala to get ready to go back to the United States. We will miss Uganda quite a bit, but we do have a Ugandan flag that we fly on our house so we don't forget. We always remember. Yesterday we had the pleasure of having dinner with the Monsignor that runs the seminary, and when he heard that I was going to preach today, he said, "I'm going to tell you what I tell all the seminarians. You can either talk short and say something, or you can talk long and be pointless." So I will talk short and say something, I hope. Today, and for many of the days around today, we hear different stories of the Last Supper. It is a story that we all know very well. So well that sometimes we don't even listen to it. We just kind of follow along with the priest, and we go from Last Supper to Garden of Gethsemane to the arrest to Caiaphas and Annas and Pilate and Herod, and we don't stop to think about what makes the story of the Last Supper so important. And in the United States, we had a nun whose name was Sister Mary Ellen, who wrote an article about the Last Supper. And she said, there are two things we should always remember and we usually forget. One is that the Last Supper was actually the first Mass. It was the first time anyone gathered at a table, held up bread, and said, "This is my body." It was the first time anyone ever held up a cup and said, "This is my blood." It was the first communion, the first time anybody ever received the Holy Eucharist. And in a little while, when Father does the prayers, he is saying the same thing that Jesus said at the Last Supper. Every Mass that has been said since that time started at the Last Supper. So that's the first thing we should remember, that we're actually celebrating the birthday of the Mass on Holy Thursday. The second thing the Holy Nun pointed out is that we should look at the guest list of the people who Jesus himself invited to the Last Supper. Who were the people that Jesus had with him when he did the first Mass? Now we would say, oh, his apostles, his closest friends, his closest followers. Yes, but who were they? We have Nathanael, a man who, when he was asked to follow Jesus, the first thing he said was, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" He didn't even want to meet Jesus at first, but they reached out to him and brought him in as a disciple. So that was one of the guests. Another guest was Thomas, a man who shortly after Jesus rose from the dead and the other apostles saw him, what did Thomas say? "I'm not going to believe. Unless I see Jesus for myself and touch him and look at the wounds, I will not believe." That was a guest at the Last Supper. James and John, whose mother kept nagging Jesus and bothering Jesus, "I want my two sons sitting on either side of you." And he said to James and John, "Will you drink from the cup that I will drink from?" And they said, yes, we will do that. But by the end of the night, they had run away just like everyone else. They were guests at the Last Supper. Simon Peter, we know from right here in this gospel story, he will deny that he was a follower. In fact, he will deny before this night is through that he even ever met Jesus. He was a guest at the Last Supper. And even Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him, was a guest at the Last Supper. All of these people Jesus knew were going to let him down, and yet he invited them to the supper. With all of their sinfulness, all of their weakness, all of the things that he knew they were going to do wrong, he reached out to them and said, "When I do this first Mass, I want you there." Why is that important? Because if he found a place for all of them in their weaknesses and their sinfulness, isn't it wonderful that he wants us here now? He invites each and every one of us to this Mass. And he says, if I had people like that there, you are so much better. You are so dedicated to me. You have not betrayed me. You have not turned away. But even if you do, look at my apostles. They did this to me. And what did I do? When I rose from the dead, I came back to them. I appeared in the same room where they were hiding, locked away. And my first word was, my peace I give you. And then I asked them, do you have anything to eat? Reminding them of the Last Supper that they shared. Telling them, I want you to do this meal, this Mass, over and over and over again, so that you do not forget me. And this is such great news for us, because if we say to ourselves, oh, I'm a sinner, I don't have a place at the table, Jesus says, oh yes you do. I have a special place for you. Come back, sit at the table with me, receive that Eucharist, that food. Or you may say, oh, I've been gone for so long. I've been so busy, I didn't come to church. I don't even know if Jesus remembers who I am anymore. There can't be a place for me at the table. And Jesus says, yes, there is. There is a place for you at the table. I have saved one for you. Come back, share this food with me. That is why I gave you this Eucharist, so that you can take my body, and I can enter into you, and I can be with you for your entire life. I will always have a place for you at the table if you want to come. Now, in a few short minutes, Father will be saying the prayers that Jesus said, and we will be handing out communion. When you come up and you receive the host, when you say amen, just don't say, amen, take the bread and go back. Really think about this wonderful gift that we've been given. Really think about the fact that Jesus wants us at this table, that he wants to be with us. And when we say amen, let's say it like we really mean it. Let's say it like we really believe it. Let's say it like we are so happy that Jesus gave us a place at the table. That is an amen that they'll hear way up in heaven. And I'm sure Jesus will be smiling on the people right here today, because we took the time to really remember.